my video. Today I want to talk about a very important question on the spiritual path for spiritual aspirants, for seekers of truth, for lovers of truth. And that is, what is real and authentic spiritual awakening? Those of you who are watching these videos or who know me, come to my satsangs, to my activities, and have probably met several teachers, read books, have your own experiences on your own path. You've probably heard many definitions for what spiritual awakening is. Some traditions talk in more mythological ways. Spiritual awakening is this kind of ending of the whole story of who you thought you were. Some say spiritual awakening is the death of ego, the death of the separate self. Some say spiritual awakening is the discovery of complete unity, complete oneness. Some speak about spiritual awakening as going beyond time and space, discovering that who you are is beyond time and space. Some talk about awakening as discovering the eternal witness, the witness consciousness. There are many variations about what spiritual awakening is. When you read books, you read many descriptions of teachers. However, there's one thing that can be easily missed, but is very crucial and important. All great teachers, all great masters have always emphasized never to compare your spiritual awakening with another person's awakening. You will notice that most teachers don't like to talk too often about the process, the esoteric, the energetic dynamics of their spiritual awakening. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that every person's spiritual awakening happens completely differently depending on their own dharma, their own soul's path and destiny, depending on their physical, biological, emotional, mental structure, depending on their capacity of the nervous system, the capacity of their nervous system, and many more factors that we do not know. And it's all one movement, one intelligent movement that creates their path of spiritual awakening. Now add to that the fact that some say that there's nothing you need to do to wake up, and something you need to, some say you need to strive very hard. So after I've said all of that, let's put all of this aside, and I want to give us a clearer, more precise definition of what awakening is as I see it. A definition that I've carefully thought about because I've tried to find a kind of common ground, a common denominator that will that everybody can use to define spiritual awakening. So here it goes. Since spiritual awakening has different levels of depth for different people, has different levels of intensity, and a great variety of experiences that can happen on the path of awakening, these should not be our measurements for whether awakening has occurred or not. What's very important to understand about awakening is that it is a shift from experiencing oneself as disconnected from the whole to experiencing oneself reconnected, in a sense, to the grace, to the flow of the greater intelligence, the greater love, the greater light, the greater consciousness. What that means, and here I'll borrow a certain term from Buddhism and use it in my own way. In Buddhism, they talk about the stream entry, entering the stream. Now, I like to use that term because for me, awakening is the moment, which can be a big moment, it can be a few big moments, a few important moments, not that big, times of great intensification of awakening. It's a moment when you enter the stream, the river of God. Now the river can be shallow, the river can be deep, the river can have a strong current or a mild current. That matters less. What really matters is you've stepped into the river of truth, the river of God. You are a stream enterer. That's the point of awakening, of spiritual awakening. And this point has there are various ways to verify if that happened to you. Now, one of the ways is that you feel a deeper sense of knowing, and just please listen to this word, knowing, not necessarily always experiencing the truth. Knowing the truth. There's something that's awoken inside of you that has, first of all, more access to the truth. So that's one pointer of to see that a real abiding awakening has happened within you. There's more access to the truth and a growing access to the truth. Secondly, that even when the experience of truth isn't available to you, the knowing of truth is always available to you, or at least 80 to 90% of the time. You're able to know the truth even if you're not experiencing it. This is very, very crucial to understand what is real spiritual awakening. Okay? You own the knowing of truth. Thirdly, is that your sense of identity, what and who you perceive yourself to be, really, really changes. Now, again, it doesn't have to be an immediate change. It can be a change over time, but definitely you will notice something changing. You cannot anymore say, yeah, of course, I am just Tom or Mark or Michael or Shirley or whatever your name is. You just can't say, yes, I am this body in this time and space. You really realize that what's looking through your eyes is much more luminous, is pure intelligence. It's love. Now, it doesn't mean that you experience it as like a fully blown mythological experience, but there's a definite sense, there's a definite deep intuiting of that, a deep knowing of that, and more often an experience of that. Another way to really define whether awakening is an abiding awakening or not is whether the experience of truth, the understanding, the insight of truth is continuously deepening over time and stabilizing in all of your body, mind, nervous system complex. So that's very, very important as well. I'm trying to see if there's any other point I didn't mention. Give me a moment. I think we've covered all the main points of what a real awakening is. It's this moment when you start to be in the stream. This stream is a stream of grace, and this grace is a literal flow, usually from above into your crown chakra, all the way down. Oftentimes it awakens also the energetic centers from below, which you've probably heard of, the Kundalini, and then the energy also flows up, and it awakens the subtle layers of consciousness within you, and informs you with deeper subtleties about truth, about your own true nature. And it also purifies you, and that's very, very important to make that distinction. Some people think awakening is the end, but as a matter of fact, awakening is the beginning of a process of complete liberation of consciousness of its own limitations. Awakening is when that process begins. Okay, it begins. So there's like an informing. You're being informed by truth, and but you're still not fully liberated. And then the process of purification starts happening on all different levels: physical, emotional, mental, on the deepest core of your beliefs, and it literally liberates consciousness from all its confined borders and limitations. And that is liberation, that much more mature process. So we have to know that when true abiding awakening has happened to us, it's a beginning of a process of a longer process, which we have also to dedicate ourselves to. So the last thing I want to say is that always respect your process. Don't compare yourself. Learn to respect the depth of your own awakening. Do not compare it to some kind of like mythological story of some guru, because then you might think, no, it hasn't happened to me, because awakening is only when you have all the time lucid dreams, when you're fully aware when you sleep, when you can, be in samadhi 24/7. This is not true. This might happen to a certain person and might not happen to another, depending on some of the factors we said earlier. Respect your own process. And the other side of the coin is do not flatten the depth of awakening. So remember, we talked about various ways to measure whether awakening has happened to you. These are profound factors, and you should really be honest with yourself if these happened. And lastly, is never make awakening into some kind of like an ambition to reach a certain position, a certain status. It's not about becoming a CEO of some company. It has nothing to do with that. Awakening is simply like growing up. When you are 10 years old, there's nothing intelligent about trying to be 20, because you're simply not 20, you're 10. When you'll get to 20 years old, you'll be 20 years old. It's very simple. It's a natural process. It's like a flower growing. It's like a tree growing. Not different at all. So just respect that process. Make it like into a joyful event, into a joyful flow. Enjoy the growth. So thank you for listening. I encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel and get informed with more videos about spiritual awakening and spiritual inspiration, and of course about numerology. And to also like my Facebook page and take part in the great information that I also constantly update on that platform. So thank you very much. I appreciate you listening, and see you in the next videos.